Dude, I feel like this is a big treat today. We're having on the David Jones, or as he's affectionately known, Davy Jones. I actually never asked you if you were cool with that or if you thought that was funny. Did you like the nickname? Like, if people called you that always? And
Gotten that sometimes. So when you do the post with it, I was like, all right, like, kind of cool. Like, I'll go with this.
I loved it, dude. People, for those watching, I wasn't in the same office that you were most of the year. I was in Dallas while you were selling in San Antonio.
Yep.
But people are always like, they feared you just like Davy Jones. They're like, oh, dude, I might be going up against Davy Jones in the tournament. And
Not even.
But just backing up really quick before we get into it, I kind of want to introduce you. So, Salem origin, born and raised down there.
Good old Salem.
But just kind of walk us through like growing up to now, and yeah, just kind of give us the origin story.
Yep. So I was born and raised in the entire house my whole life in good old Salem, Utah. Basketball is pretty much my life, all growing up, all through high school, everything. And then when that didn't work out the ways I wanted it to, got in like business, and then now got into sales this last summer and stuff like that. So
cool. And so one thing I think where we could get a lot of value kind of hear from your story is, I think for a while you were kind of apprehensive on going into sales and like if you should do it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that are in that same camp. Like, should I sell? Is it a beneficial thing? What were some of the things that maybe held you back initially? And then, like, what were the things that you're like, oh, I learned this and I'm glad that, like, I did go through the camp and did sell?
Yeah, so I was kind of raised, like, the whole mindset for my family about sales was like, oh, they're like those lying, like, deceitful salesmen, like, oh, the awful, icky. And so I was like, oh, like, salesmen are bad. That's, like, a bad thing to do. So that was, like, growing up. And then I kind of, like, part-time did sales a few years back, and so then that kind of overcame that. I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be too bad. But then still, it's like you always, everything you hear about, like, Provo sales bros or, like, just the bad rep you get. And so I never, like, wanted to admit it or just all this stuff. And then I got to a point where last summer I was broke enough. I was like, got to do sales. And so sales is brutal. Like, it's tough, but it definitely was worth it. Definitely, like, super life-changing experience. The money, the stuff you learn, stuff you grow, like, just going through the mental challenge of it too. Like, it's definitely worth it. And, like, I made it very clear to always be, like, super honest. Like, you don't have to lie or any of that stuff, obviously. Like, I was raised to think about sales. And, like, a lot of people do sales are, like, super cool people, the coolest people. It's not just like, oh, the cringe, whatever. So
yeah. No, well, and what's funny is, like, I think over time too, you learn what helps you get better in sales is different than what you think. Like, initially everyone thinks that a salesman's like this funny, charismatic, like a little over the top kind of guy, and then you realize that no, like, the best salesmen are like the most disciplined, the most, like, patient with people. They're also, like, good listeners. And those are the ones that really do succeed.
That's something, like, because my mom will still be like, oh, don't be one of those cringy salesmen. And I'm like, the cringy salesmen are not good salesmen. Like, good salesmen don't make it feel cringy because otherwise they're not doing a good job. So that's like, yeah.
Well, and I think that's good for people listening that are just starting or just getting into it. Like, you don't have to reach outside of yourself to be a good salesman. I think you just need to get really disciplined on the things that matter most, and people will want to buy from you. Because at the end of the day, like, there's so many people that go out every summer and find people that want and need pest control.
Yeah.
So as long as you just keep trucking on, there's going to be someone at the end of the tunnel that wants to buy some pest.
I would pray every day that I'd find people that I could help, and I was surprised at how often, like, people would be like, oh, like, we needed this. I was just going to look for someone. I was like, there you go. Like, that's coming in clutch. So
well, and I think I always started with a prayer too, and, like, just kind of like I think that's a big way to just, one, set your mood right and also your mindset. And is there anything else you do in your routine that you're like, oh, this is a big staple that always kept me, like, grounded, focused, and winning?
Yeah, I mean, definitely relying on God was huge. Like, I'd pray all day, every day before, like, everything. And then driving out to area every day, I had, like, my routine of there's the same like 4 motivational videos I would watch, and then the same like songs I'd listen to, and I'd like do it the same way every day because I was like, this is the only thing keeping me through, and I just like could stay in the zone, stay like consistent that way. So yeah,
I love it. So like those 4 videos, like we'll clip them down below. But like, do you share one of them or?
So like the main one that it started with was the Iron Cowboy. It was him, like a motivational video of him.
Dude, I love the Iron Cowboy.
Yeah. He's so good. And like going into the summer, he kind of became like my, like, okay, because for him, he did 101 Ironmans in a row, and the summer was about 101 knocking days. So I was like, okay, like if he can make it through that for 101 days, like I can make it through this for 101 days. So then I'd watch his video every day going out on the doors. It's like, okay, like it's going to be a grind, but like, let's go for it. We'll grow. It's worth the struggle. And so that was like the main video. It was like an 11-minute video, the Iron Cowboy motivation I'd watch every day. So
that's awesome. And one thing that I love that you said right there is you knew how long your race was. I think a lot of times when you're out there in the summer, it's very easy to feel like, oh, I'm going to be here forever. But I think having that in the back of your head of like, there's a start date, there's an end date is huge. One of the biggest pitfalls I think I see guys fall into year over year is they're like, oh, I'm just going to stay out till October or November. And I've seen year over year the guys that start early with a time set, like this is when I'm done, those are the ones that sell the highest. So, and as far as like, I mean, rookie and even some vets, I mean, you were someone that people were chasing the entire summer, kind of throughout. And was there ever like some outside motivation of like, oh, I want to beat so-and-so, or like, is that you at all? Or were you competitive with it? Or was it more of like, just like, hey, fulfilling some needs in your life? Was like, did that competitive fire ever kick in?
Yeah. Going into the summer, I wanted to like beat the rookie record in revenue from previous years. So that was always in the back of my mind. But then something I kind of found interesting through the summer is whenever I would focus on like, oh, I have to beat someone else, like, oh, I have to beat this other rookie, or I have to beat this other person, or I have to, like, that's when I would sell worse. And so for me, it was like, even in meetings or whatever, they're like, oh, what's your goal? Like, focus on your goal. And I was like, I'd write down my goal is like, I'm just going to crush it today, or I'm just going to crush it at every single door. So like each door is like a performance. Each door is like, okay, how can I lock in? How can I like say it the right way? How can I say it the right tonality, like everything, right mindset at each door? And that became the goal. And when I did it like that, like that's when I started taking off. That's when I'd have big days, big weeks. And I'd be like, well, like we'll see how much I end up at the end of the summer, but today I'm just going to like just do what I do, and that's it.
I love that. No, and what's so cool about that is when you start to like have that exterior motivation for like bad reasons of being like, I just want to beat them or just take advantage or take advantage of this competition or whatever. I think it gets you like in kind of a manic state where you're like, okay, now I got to reach over for this. And then, whereas if like you're just laying the best brick by brick to build a great wall, eventually it's going to be beautiful. And so I love that. That's a cool insight.
And just like the goals of when instead of focusing on beating someone, if I could set the goal of like, I want to do something great to glorify God and show people like if I rely completely on Him, give Him the glory, like then to show that you can accomplish something great. And just like thinking of all the money I could make, how that could help me with my business, how that could help me help other people after the summer of like, I can like with my business, helping people with mental health. It's like, if I make a ton of money this summer, then I can help people for free more in the future, or like do free events or not have to like worry about that stuff. And so definitely the more you can have a purpose that's not like just money or just beating someone, it's like you gotta have something deep because it gets tough out there. So
yeah, well, and those things would always push me further than like the whatever I was chasing. Like having like a deep and powerful why was huge.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about that really quick. So you kind of coming into the summer were like, hey, like I want to do this to fuel my business. That's why, like, that's kind of initially like why you decided to step over the line and make it happen. Talk to us a little bit about like what your business is, and then could you also talk about like the way in which like doing this experience impacted it? And right before I let you go, I feel like a lot of times people think that everyone in pest control just like wants to do pest control forever, but I'm not that way. There are some people that I think are that way, but
Yeah.
like for me, it was always a means to just blow, like expand myself and blow things up, and then do whatever's next. So talk to us on that really quick.
Yeah, so my business is pretty much my whole life. I had tons of anxiety, tons of OCD, all of that stuff. So I figured out how to like overcome that, how to change my life, and super blessed that way. So then I was like, hey, I got to teach this to as many other people as I can. So that's the business that I have, is helping people with that. And then like it was a struggle for a while with the business, just figuring out everything that goes into it, you know, marketing, sales, you know, making the programs, just gaining credibility, being a, you know, at the time, like 22, 23-year-old that didn't have a degree, trying to help people with like serious things of anxiety, OCD. And so it's kind of a struggle to make money. And so that's when
That's a lot of bulls to tackle. That's like anxiety, OCD, and starting a business. That's a lot.
Yeah. So that's when I remember when Ryan texted me, he was like, hey, like, I think this could be good for you. You could do good. Like, do you want to go to lunch? And I texted him, I was like, I mean, I'll go to lunch, like whatever, but I'm not going to do it. So like no hard feelings if I don't come out. And then it was like later that day or like the next day, I was just looking at life and the business and finances. And I was like, yeah, like I need to do sales. Like I need money to fuel my business, and just to like, cause it also hurt the business. I had so much pressure financially that it was like I always had to like, oh, I have to sign a client. I have to get someone to buy. I have to like, you know, and that definitely doesn't help with marketing or sales, because people can feel like you know, oh, they're just trying to sell me on something instead of trying to help. It's like I didn't want to be in that place, but I was just so desperate financially that I kind of had to always be trying to sell, or always be trying to like, oh, like buy. And so that's something I'm super grateful for now too, is like now that I have a big financial cushion, it's like I can actually just focus on helping people, not always having to be like, you have to buy right now. It's like they don't buy, like I'll just focus on helping first, and that's helped a lot. And then I think you said like just how the summers impacted that, or like
how it changed.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely helped with sales skills a lot. Like going into sales calls now, it's like, dang, like this is so different. Like is before I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, or like because it's crazy how I would study so many like sales videos in the past, you know, and you learn good stuff, but it's just like something about putting in the reps.
Yeah.
It's like you just learn it way better than anything that you can learn studying from a video. And so now that I've had like those thousands and thousands of reps, even though it's a different type of sell, it's just like your confidence is so much higher, and just knowing what to say, knowing how to say it. And so that's a huge change for sure.
Have you ever heard that story about like the two groups that made different kinds of pots?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the one Alex Hormozy talks about it. Basically,
I love that guy.
He's way good. But basically, there's the one group that like is told to make like the most beautiful pot that they possibly can, and this other group that's in ceramics is told to make as many as they possibly can. And at the end of the day, the people that made a bunch ended up making a way prettier pot than the people that were told to make one. And I think it's the same thing with like I see a lot of people at the beginning of summers getting really in their head like, oh man, maybe I just shouldn't move forward, or maybe I need to think about this more, or could I stay in the apartment today and think about my pitch and then I'll go out tomorrow. And it's like, dude, like motion's the lotion. Like, let's just get out there and make it happen, and things come together. So
very true.
Kind of talk to me about anything wild that happened this summer. Like you were in a pretty, I mean, I love those boys down in San Antonio, but there's a lot of energy like in that group. So tell me, like, was there any funny stories or any moment that you were like, this was kind of like a wild funny time?
I mean, anytime you have Oakland and Ryan, like you're gonna have some crazy comments, some controversy, just the things they say, controversy, just like definitely some crazy stuff. I mean, like I don't know how much you want to share on this. It's also there was the crazy massage therapist place that like, you can ask them about that, but just some crazy stuff that I don't know. So good times. I also got bit by a dog. Still have the mark right here. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, it was some adventures out there.
What kind of dog was it?
oh, what was it? It was like it's a lab or something. It's a dog that's not usually mean, but it just pounced. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. No, dude. The dogs are the worst, and I think a lot of times people are asked like, "Do you knock no soliciting? Do you?" But like for me, the scariest ones to knock weren't those signs. It's the one that was like a big old dog just on the porch. Do you knock those?
I got to the point where I was like, oh, if there's a fence, like, obviously if it's a big gate, like, you don't go in, but if it's just like a fence you can open, like, I'd be like, oh, it's fine. So I started doing those, and then when I got bit by the dog, like, I think that one had a fence, and so I was like, shoot. Like, for the next few weeks, I was so in my head about dogs. Like, Ty was the same way. We talked about a dog would bark, and we're like, oh, like, just jumping, because, like, it gets in your head when you get bit, and so I stopped knocking those for a while, and then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'll like start knocking those houses again. But
I had a buddy that had like would bring a dog whistle with him, so I like, to fend him off. For me, I always had the scooter that would always like kind of keep him away.
Yeah, well, the time I got bit, it was after the scooter. I knocked on the door, they open it, and I like start my pitch, and then the dog just jumps out from behind them and then just like pounces on my leg, and I was like, what the heck? So there's no scooter there, but my mom actually sent me doggy treats and like pepper spray for dogs. She's like, you can just carry this around like every house. I can give them a dog treat. I was like, it's too much effort, but it's probably smart. So.
Could you imagine pepper spraying some lady's dog? she's like, what'd you do?
Might lose you the cell. But.
Or dude, did you say an interesting Google review?
True.
So just basically the other thing I wanted to like talk about is like literature, like stuff that you read, stuff that you consume. Was there anything that you're like, oh, like this was a great book in summer, this was a great podcast post, like this is just something that like I think could really help anyone in this space?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like ABCs of Closing. There's just like the one we'd always read all the time. I probably should have read more, but for me it was just like, I mean, the pitch document too that Oakland has, and then just studying from like Oakland every day, just trying to watch what he would say and just mimic it as much as I could, and just go off of that. And
can I say something on that really quick?
Yeah.
Keeping it simple, I think, is big, and I love that. Like the pitch document, like working with your trainer, and then also like just like the ABCs of Closing. I think that's a great place to start for anybody getting into it, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like in sports, like they always tell you like get back to the basic, beef, like all those like different things. Like I think a lot of times people want to get fancy with sales, and you'll see that the best guys are really, really simplistic.
That's one thing I noticed too. The first time I shadowed Oakland, I was like, he says like so few of words. Like he doesn't complicate it. It's like such a short pitch, but just the way he says it is so good. And that's like the thing for me, because when I was selling well or whatever, I was like, I don't feel like I'm like that good of a salesman. Like I'm not saying anything that like crazy or that cool. It was literally just like maybe 4 things that you focus on. Like for me, it was tonality was like the biggest thing by far. Like the vibe, the tone that you're giving off, that's like everything. Like you can say the exact same thing, sell like 0 one day and then sell like 10 the next day.
Yes.
Say the exact same thing, but your tonality, your vibe, like that is the biggest thing I learned. Like that is everything. And then it was just like, so every day I was like, okay, make sure my tonality is good, like the vibe I'm giving off, and then like bandwagon a ton and do like the feel, felt, found, story close, and that's like, and like assumptive closing. It was like just that. Like that's it.
If you were listening, clip those back, because all those closes are really, really powerful. And I used to think that you needed to, when I started, I was like, you need to know all 26 closes in the ABCs of Closing. But I honestly think there's like 10 or 11 that a lot of people use that are really powerful. And if you can just get good at a lot of those ones you brought up, you can overcome a lot of like tough places and convince a lot of people to your way of thinking. Let's talk about one-leggers really quick and like how, and how to last one. So, I mean, what's some things that maybe you're like in the beginning when I would get like a one-legger, I would fall on this, but by the end I figured out if I did this different, I could convince someone that would like to my way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, when it came to like one-leggers or spousal objection, whatever, I mean, at first I'd just do a lot of like, I'd always push the tentative. of like, oh, well, we'll just get it signed up, but it's no commitment. And then like you can talk to your spouse, make sure they're good with it. And if not, like, no worries. Just kind of like, it's like, oh, at least then we'll get it, like, possibly. But then those cancel so much, and it's just like, I guess just from Oakland, he'd show like in meetings or whatever, he's like, just like go for the close. Like even if they, because something I realized is a lot of times, even when they give a spouse objection or they're like, oh, I need to talk to them, it's like a lot of times it really is just them saying something as an excuse. Like they'll be like, oh no, like I have to talk to my wife, and you're like, oh, like yeah, for sure, like everyone's, you know, same way, but you just got kind of, you know, hit and run, keep going. And then even if they say it again or whatever, but then if you can like say something that they're like, oh, I actually really like that, you like can somehow like get them on board, and all of a sudden like spouse doesn't even exist anymore. Like they don't like they don't care to talk to him at all, and it's like, oh, like that wasn't even a thing. Like that was just. And so a lot of times I feel like the biggest objections we get are actually just mental objections. Like the more you treat it like it's an objection, the more you treat it like, oh yeah, like because of that I can't sell them, or oh because of that, yeah, they can't do it. It's like that's really the objection. Most of the time, a lot of times if you treat it like it's like, oh, that doesn't really matter. Like they can still, if you can still show them that it's going to add value to their life and make their life better, like then you can still get them to go for it, even to the point where they're like all in. And even if the wife didn't want to do it, or whatever, it's like they're still going to do it because they just decided they want to, or
yes. Whatever. One thing that kind of shocked me when I started out and I finally started getting some of those one-leggers is I'm like, it blows my mind how dishonest most people are with like interacting with them. And I think when you're in a customer like relationship, when you're helping someone like that, you have to realize that you need to be extremely honest. You need to be like hold the highest level of integrity, and be used to people coming at you with like a lot of half truths and figuring out a way to help them get to a more honest equilibrium. So
it's true. It's crazy how much people lie to salesmen. I'm like, holy cow. they tell stories of, they'll be like, oh, like I need to talk to my wife, she's gone. And then they like say something that makes them like it, and then they're like, oh honey, like we're doing this, and it's like, what? Like she's right there behind you, or you'll see them behind them like, oh, who's that? And they're like, oh, that's my cousin or whatever. You're like, okay, like they're just lying every time.
Well, and I think that's a big thing though, learning to push through that uncomfortable part. Like I remember when I first started shadowing, like when I was in the first couple of doors, the guy would like, he would be like overcome an objection. I would like, dude, I wanted to be like back on the street, turning up the next. Was there any of that for you that you were like, oh, I learned that like just sitting there a little bit longer, pushing a little bit like on this or that, like when did that click for you, and was it pretty quick? And yeah, talk to us on that.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that I noticed and I feel like helped is when it comes to like when you persist compared to when you just like, oh, it's not worth my time. It's like if they show any interest, then like it's worth, I'll persist and go to a different angle, try something new, because it's like I saw the light in their eyes. Like I saw that there's like, they have the bugs, or they like, I saw the interest. So then it's like, okay, this is something they want that actually would be good for them. So now it's just a matter of like getting them to actually overcome the uncertainty or overcome whatever it is and actually decide that that's like worth it for them.
We're going to pause really quick. No, I totally agree on that. And one of the funny things too about like diving in or like continuing to like push with people, I also started to realize if they don't move, like if they're just gonna stay there and like not shut the door or not go, I used to like, I'm like, oh no, like they are like, they're still somewhat interested here. And so when I started out, I was like, if people just keep giving me time, I'm gonna keep taking it. And eventually you learn that like, hey, there's some people that aren't worth your time. But I think it's really good in the beginning, especially to be like, hey, if like they're willing to go down this rabbit hole with me, like we'll go down it.
I remember one day, like, because my first month I didn't sell as much, and then it just kind of like took off in my second month, and then sold better the rest of the time. But I remember one of the days that helped like shift things is they were talking about just closing hard, like closing all the time, being assumptive, like just starting to sign them up and just like just going for it until they like stop you, whatever. And so I remember one day I was like, okay, like just close hard. And so I just like just go for it. I remember I got this person all the way, they like signed it or something, and then they're like, oh, like this isn't my house, like I don't live here. I was like, what? Like what I was like, how, like why did you just sign them, like what are you doing? And it was just like, I was like, oh, I guess that's good, like that's closing hard. And so then from that point, it's like obviously not about being pushy, like doing it in a good way where there's still rapport, and like I always wanted to leave on a good note where it's like we feel like happier and better off after talking, not like they hate me or I hate them. But it's like just kind of closing hard, and just like you said, like if they're gonna keep giving you time, you just keep going with it. Like just keep assuming like, oh, obviously they want to buy, like, oh, everyone does, so just like keep going with it.
Well, and I think what asking for the sale does is, like, I think it also gives you the opportunity for them to buy, but I think it also teaches you quicker, when are they interested? When am I losing them?
Yeah.
And it gives you, it allows you to evaluate your work at a way higher frequency than if you don't close.
Yep.
So, cool. Well, and I guess just kind of talk to me on, like, as far as, like, future goals and stuff like that. Like, I know you're like, hey, like, I'm thinking about selling again and all that stuff. What's, like, if you're like, hey, like, I would love to get, like, I think I could do X or Y or Z. Like, what's like what, like, do you have anything you're like, I would love to put that in my career or my bag or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the biggest goal is the business. And so whatever will help that take off the best way so I can help as many people with that, like that's the biggest goal. So then it's just a matter of like, when it comes to sales, it's like, okay, making enough money. Like if I could go out next summer and make like, you know, $250K or whatever it is, like, be like, okay, that'd be like a really big financial boost. That could fund me for a long time with my business. Like that would really help. Also, if I recruited and had people, it's like, that'd be good managing skills and skills of like, I mean, coaching them mentally through the summer and just figuring out how to lead and do all these things that will help with the business. And just, yeah, some of the things like that of like, if it could help me. It's like this thing talking with Oakland, he talks about, he's like, I think if you crush it, go all in the next summer or two, like that it can, like that can springboard your business like 5-10 years. And so it's kind of just figuring out like what's the best way with that. So
I love it. So one of the things that I think recruiting does too, is it kind of puts you in where you own your own business within a company. Like it teaches you how to add value to someone. If you're going into B2B sales or if you're going anything where it's like long-term relationship based, recruiting is like a really good example of like doing that. And then also you have to still perform sales and all that stuff along the way.
Yep.
When I look back on my tenure of like knocking and all that stuff, I view that as like, that's really when I learned how to manage a balance sheet. I learned how to communicate and work with people. And it's an invaluable experience.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, just kind of like in closing and stuff like that, is there anything that you're like, hey, I would love to leave everybody with this, or like this would be a good thought for everyone to like, that like across the BRD family.
Across BRD. I mean, one thing I just gotta say, because all summer, like in those darkest, hardest moments when I was like, I don't know if I can keep going, like I don't know if I can go again today, or I don't know if I can do this. It was always like, all right, God, like I'm gonna give you all the glory, and just trust that you'll help me. And he helped me so many times. He came in so clutch so many times and carried me the whole summer. So I have to give glory to him and just say like, that was, I mean, the more that you make God a part of it, the more that you rely on him and have faith in him, like that helps so much in so many ways. So definitely with that. And then also just, I mean, I guess like the mental challenge is worth it, I guess. That's something like in the moment it can be so hard, or it can be tough. Like sales is tough for sure. Gained a lot of respect for salesmen this summer, but like it's worth it because it's the hardest things that we go through. Like afterwards, you just feel so good and so accomplished, and just like I remember during the summer when I was like hating life and it was so hard, but I'd think of my friends back home that were like just having fun, going boating, like doing all this fun stuff, and I was like at times I'd be like, oh dang, like this sucks. I want to be that, like doing that, but then overall it was like, honestly, like what would I rather do? Have something that grows me and stretches me and like pushes me so hard that afterwards I can be like, I did that, like, and I'll never be the same again because of it.
Yes.
And like, would I rather have that or be like, oh, I had a lot of fun? And it's like, fun stuff's good, but it's like, it's worth it. Like, I'll take the mental challenge of pushing yourself every single day and like finding a way to dig deeper every single day. Like, it's a good feeling.
100%. Well, every summer when I would come back, I'd look back on the summer and be like, dude, how far like I grew and everything like that. Like, oh, that was just invaluable. And then you look back and you're like, yeah, I did miss the boating day. I did miss this. But then you look over like the tenure and like what it creates the next year of your life, and you're like, oh, dude, I'll take that every time.
Yeah.
So, dude, Dave, this is a great pod. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you,
dude. I was this was one I've been looking forward to doing a while. So I know a lot of people. A lot of people wanted to get to know you just company wide. I remember when I was in the different offices like Dallas or Austin, they'd be like, "What's David doing?" Like, I did. He's crushing it. Is he a rookie? I'm like, yeah, he is. They're like, that's crazy. So. You were definitely someone that people were chasing and looking up to all summer, and I want to thank you because it seriously impacted everyone in a positive way.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity and everything that you've done. Put the work into creating a business, and such a good one. And like, for a sales company to be able to trust the leadership and know that they have your back. Like when I was struggling, like you offered to call me every single day to help me through that time. It's like most companies, if you're at like, I don't know, some of the bigger ones, whatever, it's like they're probably not going to have your back that way, and you can't like necessarily trust them as much. So appreciate all that you've done to create a good sales experience. And yeah.
Well, those were great phone calls, by the way. Those are some memories. I miss those days.
Good times.
Well, hey, dude, David, thanks for being on, man. Good talking to you.
Yep. Thank you.